In this episode, we're cracking open the dusty journals and chasing clues across Europe and the Middle East as we revisit one of the most beloved action-adventure films of all time, alongside one unforgettable pairing, Harrison Ford and Sean Connery as the ultimate father-son duo. It's time for Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Stay with us.
Get ready for the 3324 podcast, where lifelong friends Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber share their love of all things music and movies. Dean has directed short films and is a music trivia buff. And Eric, trained in audio engineering, brings his extensive knowledge of music and film to the conversation as they discuss, debate, and celebrate their favorite albums, films, and much more.
Welcome, friends, to the 3324 podcast. My favorite time of the week, Eric, is when we
convene.
When we convene.
In the podcast.
When we all sit together at the round table. We sit at the round table. We see who we've got with us.
Yeah.
We review the material, and then we come together and talk about it. It's just
lots of fun.
It's just fun. Yeah, it's just a lot of fun
and great company.
Yes, and if you're new to this whole experience, well, we've got a bunch of episodes you can check out. Feel free to do that. If you want to support independent content creators like Eric and I, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/3324. You can become a Green Room supporter if you like. You can do that, or if you just want to, take the basic steps, make sure you follow us on your favorite podcast provider. That's easy peasy, lemon squeezy. If you're listening to us on YouTube, you can go ahead and subscribe and follow us there as well. If you post comments, we respond to all that stuff, Eric, right? No listener left behind.
I dare you to say that 5 times fast. The easy
No
peasy, squeezy, all
easy
that.
Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Oh, that's it. That's a piece of cake. I could do that one. It's we appreciate everybody, and if you're a returner, of course, thank you for coming back and checking in with us. We always appreciate that as well. And speaking of coming back and checking in with us, we've got 2 of our movie moguls, as we call them, with us. Since he just goes by one name on his display screen, we're just gonna, much like Adele and Cher and Madonna and all those other ones, it's Sean.
Hey, everybody.
Sean Grady. How
What's
are you,
up?
sir? Yeah.
I'm doing great, gentlemen. Happy to be back. Happy to be with you always.
Happy to have you back.
And thanks for having me.
Yeah, we always, you know what? We're always going to grab you 2 guys for anything like George Lucas adjacent. I think, it'll so when we do Howard the Duck, expect to get the phone call as well.
I better get the call for Howard the Duck.
You want to do the good stuff, you got to get your hands dirty with Howard the Duck as well. It's not all just Indiana Jones and Star Wars.
Yeah.
It's going to be some of the other stuff too. So.
Okay. He's
in for a penny, in for a pound. So Sean Grady, thank you so much for joining us. Last with us on our Godfather expedition, as we did a double shot. We did 2 episodes in a row of Godfather 2 and 3. We just closed out that trilogy and set it off sailing into the sunset. And this way we're continuing another trilogy that we got to finish up in not in chronological order. Next up on the guest list, Mr. Indiana Leshy.
That's right.
We named the dog Indiana. So he is Nick Leshy.
Yeah. It's appropriate we didn't do the Indiana Jones trilogy in chronological order, because Temple of Doom was like a prequel to Raiders of the Lost Ark, even though it came out after. And so, yeah. So timeline.
We should have done it first, which we didn't. So
it's like Lucas. Lucas does that. Then he did Young Indiana Jones, so he went back even further. So
he did.
Yeah.
He did, with like 3 different kids or 2 different kids.
Yeah. But it's all good.
Yeah, I guess.
Now we just have to go back and do it all, right?
Do we do the trilogy, or do we subject ourselves to the most recent entries?
I gotta finish the trilogy.
At least the trilogy.
Yeah, at least.
But I wouldn't mind talking about the last 2. Well, like you say, you're willing to do Howard the Duck, and we have to do Crystal Skull. So
I guess so.
Yeah.
Dial of Destiny. Anyway, so let's get going with everything as we do in the beginning of our episodes. We give you some statistical information, and here it comes right your way. This film, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, was released in May of 1989, directed by Steven Spielberg, because he made an oath to George Lucas. He made a promise, a solemn vow, And George Lucas said, Steven, I want you to direct these films. It's a trilogy. I have all the stories set, but you need to do all three. And Steven said, I'll do that. If I'll make that vow to you, because you've got them everything ready. And then Steven Spielberg would later find out that there were no other stories outside.
No, there weren't. That's
Raiders, and he got sold a bill of goods, and he got hoodwinked by his friend. But he's like, I still, I made the promise, but I still got to do it. Even though there wasn't three stories.
Yeah,
there was one story that they had a lot of stuff in. They just kept pulling it out and putting it in other films. This was written by Jeffrey Boehm, who was a pretty prolific screenwriter in the 70s and 80s. I mean, he started
Lethal Weapon 2. Yep.
Lethal Weapon 2 and 3,
Yep.
The Dead Zone, The Lost Boys,
Inner Space. Yeah.
Yeah, we had a lot of stuff in the 80s, and very diverse stuff too. Like, you wouldn't think that the guy that did the Dead Zone would do Lost Boys and then would do I'm going to say the Lethal Weapon films and Raiders and Indiana Jones have more DNA in common than those other two. This was made for a $48 million budget, and it made back $474 million box office. This was the return to form for the trilogy. It was nominated for 3 Oscars, score, sound, and sound editing. And it won 1 Oscar for sound editing. So I guess, Denham Elliott was not given a lifetime award for his
achievement. Yeah.
Lifetime achievement for his Marcus Brody return, who it looks like they dropped his IQ down like 10 or 20 points.
Oh, we'll talk about that for sure.
My God, yes. I mean, it's something that it was a good choice. It was the right choice to make. But yeah, there, we've got some returning characters, which also kind of help fix some of the issues with the previous film, and I think talking a little bit about Temple of Doom, did everybody see? I know Eric and I saw it in the theater, but did Nick and Sean, you guys see that in the theater? And Sean, you were probably 13, 14?
Which one we're talking about? The
Temple
last
of Doom?
Temple of Doom. I was
Temple of Doom.
About 10.
About 10. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Indiana Leshy, how old were you?
What year was it again? It was
89.
84.
84.
Oh, yeah,
I was 14. I was 14.
Okay.
Yeah. And that got a lot of backlash because it was like very dark, and then they changed the rating to PG-13, right? They invented the PG-13 rating.
You guys are a different demographic. Sean, what did you think of that at the time? Especially being a big Star Wars fan.
I loved
that
it.
kind of. You loved Temple of Doom?
Yeah, I thought it was great.
I hated Temple of Doom when it came out. I love it now, but
interesting.
No, there was a video game also. I loved it.
I thought it was different. It felt different from Raiders. And then when this came out, a couple of years later, I was like, "This is it. This is Raiders. This is like Raiders again." In many ways, intentionally, right?
Yeah. Wow.
But then looking back, a lot of people give Temple of Doom more props. Like
now they
really
do.
Good. Yeah, now. But back then, it was like it was the same thing with Empire Strikes Back, right? That got some backlash back then.
Well, I think that was the template that George Lucas was trying to put on this. Eric, you liked it. I didn't, right?
I love Temple of Doom.
Yeah, when we saw it, I remember when I walked out of it, I was like, I'm like,
well, when we saw it right from the get go, you were already picking it apart. It's too elaborate. It's like the even the title crawl was too much for you. You already had it in your head.
The life raft took me out of the film. Once that happened, and it happened early on, it had me nitpicking.
Oh, but
like once something like that it is not executed in the right way, because it looked so fake and phony.
I didn't think so. I thought it was a great effect.
When it comes out of the plane and it's kind of like flowing.
Well, when they're slaloming down the mountain, sure, but when it first comes out of the plane, I thought that looked fantastic. In fact, there's actually a YouTube video of people commenting. They thought there were people in the fucking thing.
Really? I didn't.
Yeah, they did, and they saw the dummy, and they're like, "Oh, it's a dummy," but they were still impressed by the effect.
I wasn't buying it back then, and I'm probably still
it's
not
a
buying it now.
ridiculous scene, but they think about these movies is that they take it to a certain level, but they always tend to pull back.
I would beg to differ. I think that they tried that with Temple of Doom, and I think, they kind of we're going for like the, bigger is better. Like what, big things can we do?
Yeah.
And then I think this film in many ways, like Sean said, is very much like Raiders, but in the best parts of it, meaning that it doesn't, this isn't about how big of a thing can happen. And I actually came to the realization watching this film after being a fan since we were kids, I came to a realization about what these films are really about. Like after all this time, because I always just watched them for like whatever. But, Last Crusade kind of brings everything back down to a little bit more of a realistic edge and tone, right? It doesn't deal, there's always the element of mysticism in these films, but part of the thing I've learned is it's not really the point.
It's not. It's always
the journey.
It's always the journey of the character.
The journey and not the destination is kind of part of what I've learned. But just a little behind the scenes before we kick it off. Sean Connery was always offered the role. He kept turning it down because he was only 12 years older than Harrison Ford, and he didn't think people would buy the father-son thing.
George Lucas didn't want him either. Yeah, he was like, he's James Bond. He's gonna steal the show. He's gonna come on. He's got the ego.
Our idea on, right?
He's gonna try to take over, and which he did, but Spielberg shut that down. He said, he controlled them.
Yeah.
So that was, Lucas's concern as a producer, which, I feel like he's always been a better producer than director.
Yeah.
In that sense, like he kind of has that intuition, but Connery agreed, and they all had that meeting, and they just worked it out, and it was great. It was such a welcome addition, and he made the movie as far as
he looks like he's having so much fun doing this
movie,
right?
Yeah, because he doesn't really, Connery's not known for like comedic or light, like he's done a lot of different types of films, and he's done some comedies, but this really kind of does it the right way. It skirts the line between comedy and the father-son relationship.
Yeah, I agree. I found myself laughing more at the movie as an older man watching it than when I first saw it, and just that father-son relationship takes on a different meaning, obviously, as you get older.
Of course, yeah,
and like that's what I would say. I was laughing more this time around, which
I remember not liking the film very much when it first came out because it was a comedy.
Because we flipped opinions. I love this, and Eric was like, "Eh."
I didn't care I thought it was silly, but the comedy was silly to me. It was slapstick. It was almost, and every aspect, every scene of this movie, it's played for laughs. It's not just like Raiders has humor in it, but there are scenes that happen, events that happen that are humorous, but turn into something dangerous, and then it's just that becomes the set piece. And this thing. Even when they're not on screen, there's, this ridiculous banter, like the jokes are kind of lame and it just kind of, at least I felt that way at the time. Now I love it. I enjoy it. I think it's great, but I didn't want to, what the fuck is this? This is a comedy. This is not, I want to see indie punching, I want to see the fucking violence. I want to see him, tearing it up. I don't want to see, a Bob Hope road movie in a sense. Like, you know what I mean? Like it kind of had that Abbott and Costello
a little bit
feel.
of Abbott and Costello. Yep.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I was taken aback by that, just how much of it there was in this film at the time.
Yeah.
And I just grew to love it over time, but yeah. So
yeah, I think it's a balancing act.
Yeah.
Just like the other films were, just like Temple of Doom was a balancing act that didn't really achieve what it swung so dark.
Yeah.
That there wasn't a balance, and it's hard to maybe balance something that has a darker theme to it too. It's going to be what it's going to be, right? I mean,
you hit it right on the head when you say balance. It was such an imbalance because it was so dark. Spielberg tried to, have some levity in there by injecting some of those silly scenes, the guy getting hit on the head, with the hammer and things like that. But it didn't land because it's a movie. Just the tone of it overall tone of it was so dark that it didn't have that flow. So
and it Temple of Doom made a lot of money. It didn't make as much as Raiders. It made less than Raiders. So this is one of the rare trilogies, Nick, where they were able to course correct.
Yeah.
Normally it's a the notion of diminishing returns. It's like each sequel is kind of usually a little not as good. It's a little less. It gets a little more campy or it gets a little goofy. In this instance, they made a second film that was really dark and kind of like, what is this? And they were able to kind of look at that, get a different screenwriter, get someone else in here, and kind of understand what those elements are that bring that people loved about it, and bring it back.
And I think they did it the right way, because it has all those. It's like they looked at the first movie and maybe broke it down beat by beat, and you run the risk then of just making something that's just a rehash of the first movie. But adding the dad character, I think that was pivotal to making this what it is. And the whole thing about the Holy Grail, it really ties into the character and what he's always been out there searching for the treasure, all this. And it really ties into that last moment, where it's like, let it go. This would have been like the perfect movie to kind of just end the whole saga. And then maybe just continuing it with River Phoenix, we can talk about that later.
Yeah, we're going to go to that next.
Yeah, because I think that would have been the best way to go about it. It's like Harrison Ford kind of closes the curtain on this. They ride off into the sunset. Then if you want to do more Indiana Jones movies, other adventures before, Temple of Doom or whatever, you have a young actor like River Phoenix who could do it. And then you maybe bring back Harrison Ford for like the beginning and the end. So they had that setup. And I think that's what Lucas probably wanted to do. I know he wanted to get, River back for the young Indiana Jones Chronicles. And we can talk about that later. But this was just perfect. This was like all the elements of Raiders that worked. They brought it back. Yes, they added more humor. Like you said, course correction for the darkness of, Temple of Doom. But as a kid, I loved it. I thought the jokes landed fine. And looking at it back now, it's like, yeah, they're corny and stuff like that, but it works. Like I thought it was really good.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about, the one of the hallmarks of a Raiders film, is there's always a beginning, much like the James Bond films. And he basically took that. There's always like a beginning set piece. There's always a beginning kind of thing that happens, just like in James Bond films. There's something that happens. Usually in Bond films, it's unrelated. Like he needs to get out of some situation or get away from something. And Raiders is very similar in that aspect to it. And in this one, again, they did reconfigure the whole thing by bringing in the amazing River Phoenix. I mean, in watching this again today, my heart hurt.
Yeah.
When I watched it, just because he was so fucking good.
He was on the cusp, man, of being like, and you see where his brother went, and he's so much more talented.
That young, and he had played Harrison Ford's son in the movie Mosquito Coast, and Ford's like, he played my son already, but just as a young actor, taking that to the next level and really getting enough of he understood the little ticks and little small movements that Ford would do as the character and incorporate him. He wasn't doing a full-on impression, but there was just the things with the eyes, and the crooked, the half smile when he gets to cross a Coronado and he looks back like River Phoenix absolutely embodied it. Like that's what that wasn't just hiring someone. Oh, you're going to play young Indiana Jones. He really kind of, you felt that was him. As a youngster, Sean.
Even when he said the line, right? It belongs in a museum. It's like he's not doing an impression, but he got the inflection right. So when Harrison Ford says it again, it's like you believe that's the character when he was younger.
Yeah.
I love the part.
Sean, I mean, agree or disagree with?
I agree. When he jumps for the horse and the horse moves out of the way, and it's like Harrison Ford as a kid. You see it, like he looks up, and like I'm like, that is I was thinking exactly what you said. I'm like, this is perfect. You believe that is Harrison Ford as a kid, Indiana Jones as a kid. And I love the part when he puts the hat on his head, and then it transitions into him as the adult, and it just he gets punched in the face. It's perfect. That's like I think that's like one of my favorite parts. I know we'll do it, but that right there, I love
Eric, they give you the whole, we get the whole origin, very compact, but very well done. Like they add each element of, the whip and then the hat and, like, it's all condensed, but again, it was just done so great with the moving train and the different compartments, and they just kind of, really laid it out for.
I didn't particularly care for that, like like that contrived sort of, like you kind of rolling your eyes and you're like, okay, everything we know about the character up to this point is done in this one little misadventure when he's like 14 or something or 15. Everything, including the scar.
The scar.
You know what I mean? But, you watch it now. It's great. And, it's one of the reasons why I didn't like the movie Solo, because I felt like that was a 2-hour version of this beginning sequence of Last Crusade, where everything that we know about the character of Han Solo happens in this one movie, in this one thing. But it's the performances. It's like you say, it's the action. It's the way it's shot. And then, of course, the humor of it. And he really, I have to say, I mean, he's better than Harrison Ford in some stuff that Harrison Ford does in this movie. Like he plays them straight. Like, you know what I mean? He's not he's not as goofy. He's not as like, I belong, not as grumpy and, just sort of like, I felt like Ford kind of took it to that level in this one. Like he kind of, went there with it, but it's like having River Phoenix show us that young energy there that was fantastic. And what a loss. It's just such a shame. He could have had such a tremendous career,
Yeah, and he was so good. It was such a surprise when we saw it. We weren't ready for that. We always get the Paramount, logo with the mountain, and then it dissolves into a real mountain. And we just like Star Wars, it always starts off with a planet and it pans down or whatever. Ships. Like we're used to those things, but then to give us this whole other adventure as a Boy Scout, and then it transitions to him. It belongs in a museum. So do you.
I love the fact that the guy's still alive. He's still wearing wearing the white suit. He's like, it's just, you just go with it. You got to really just,
exactly.
The thing about this movie is you just say, fuck it. And you just go,
100%.
You can't nitpick it. You can't I don't know, maybe the film nerd in me, the movie nerd back then, I was just sort of nitpicky. Mm-hmm. I didn't want certain things about the, whatever, but I just love it now. I just adore it.
And I used to hate the special effects when they're up in the Zeppelin. It looked like blue screen. That was one pet peeve in the movie theater. I was like,
all the effects,
and a lot of practical effects in this, like the action sequence. So it's like that was like one thing where I was like, so we all nitpick, but it's still a great movie.
But it's a lot of the stuff, and how we'll get to it. But in some of the action sequences, I felt were a little bit more sloppier than the stuff in Raiders. Like, Raiders was so well choreographed with some of the fight scenes and so meticulously done, and even the truck sequence was like you knew exactly what was happening, how it was happening. This thing, we'll get to it, but it's just there were certain things that I'm just kind of scratching my head, like how the fuck, like the tank sequence, for example, is the biggest example of that. Let's
in the belly of that steel beast.
But let's talk about a little bit more about the cast and the plot.
I mean, again, it's just let's see, who do we got? We've got, of course, Harrison Ford. We talked about River Phoenix. Sean Connery as Henry Jones Sr. Denham Elliott returns after a one film hiatus as Marcus Brody. Again, Alison Doody as Dr. Elsa Schneider. She would be the first of a trope that would follow the rest of the films of double agents.
Yeah. Yeah.
She was the first one, and it was unique. And then Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, whatever, had a triple, he was a triple agent, Ray Winston or whatever. Dial of Destiny, the girl, the young woman, she was kind of like with Indy, then against him, right? And trying to like get rid of him, she was the original. John Reese.
Were you guys surprised by were you surprised that she ended up being the villain and then the other twist. Like it's so obvious now seeing it. But I remember in the movie theaters, I was kind of surprised. I was like, oh, and then when the other guy was like, trust no one.
I don't
like,
really.
Oh, you.
She's a femme fatale. I guess she was trying to might make it. I don't really see her as a villain. I just think she's really, in the, there's that greed that's inherent in all the movies. There's at least one character that's obsessed with something. Even like Abner Ravenwood, we never saw, Marion's dad, but we know that he was obsessed with finding the Ark. So now we have, multiple characters in this movie who looking for the Holy Grail, including Henry, who is that obsession is there. And even a Dial of Destiny, what a brand new character, once again, the obsession takes hold, and it's like, he becomes very eccentric, and all this kind of stuff happens. So it's like this, that,
Yeah, and
every movie has that as well. Yeah,
and they gave her, if you look at Willie Scott from Temple of Doom, all she did was yell and scream. She
was Fay Wray.
So at least in Last Crusade, they the character's a little more fleshed out. She was kind of walking us through things, helping, but we should have just listened to Connery. He's like, oh, she's a Nazi. I'll kill her. He's like, go ahead.
She talks in her sleep.
Go ahead.
Oh my God, that grin that he gives him, he's like, she talks in her sleep. And he like looks over and like Indy looks at him and he's just that smirk he gives him. He's like, I didn't trust her. Why didn't you? Oh, it's just so, oh man.
Yeah, he gets Connery just brings like that whole extra thing. Like we've talked about with other actors, Sean, right? Like at a point, Pacino became a Pacino character. Nicholson became a Nicholson character. Connery kind of became like this. Just his manner of speaking became like a character in and of itself. And in this film, there's no attempt to make him like from America, that he was from the frontier. Like, in America, he was just
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I'm like,
just Connery.
Yeah, I'm like, that's Connery. That's just him. And Indy doesn't have any accent. They never say he was born. It's just him.
Well, he does don a Scottish accent, and
which is
you would
horrible.
think he would have had a better Scottish accent.
Pretty bad.
Living with his father than trying to be, trying to look at the tapestries.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
Grunwald.
Yeah,
and not to mention the fact that he could speak how many languages, Indy, and he doesn't have an accent. Like he can't, when you speak another language, a lot of it has to do with the accent as well to make it stick. So, and it's, he tries
it was so horrible.
It was just really bad.
I went and caught the sniffle.
Only for time. I don't even know what he says there. It's like, what did he say there?
Tapestries here. It's like, what? It was bad. But it was so. But that's part of the fun of it. It was so comedically bad that he wasn't. Fooling anybody.
Right.
If the butler bought that, it would have been like, okay, that's just dumb. The butler's like, you're
ridiculous. Yeah.
If you are Scottish lord, then I am Mickey Mouse.
Yes, that was great.
Oh my goodness.
But I think all these building blocks of bringing back old characters, so that gives us the familiarity. I always have a problem with that word. But then folding in new characters that are well written, also. So some of these other sequels will bring back the old characters for nostalgia, but then that's all you get, right? Is you get a rehash. So this was kind of bringing back Brody and giving him something to do, and Sallah to a lesser extent, but then also having in new characters that kind of have to interplay with them too, which was really nice. So let's talk a little bit about Mr. Denham Elliott as Marcus Brody.
Yeah. I mean, I loved him in Raider. I love him
generally. I love him generally.
I love him too. He was great, but he was always the sort of the father figure for Indy. He was sort of, taking Henry's place, wasn't he?
Kind of like a mentor.
Kind of a mentor, but you get that. But we always kind of had that in our head, though. You put this guy in the field, I don't think he's going to, you know what I mean? Like we always thought that he would be a buffoon, and that's exactly how they played him in Last Crusade. They just put him out there and he's just, and of course the classic scene where
he speaks 5 languages.
Yeah, that was
yeah.
one. I was going to say, Sean, that's one of the greatest misdirections ever.
Oh my God, it's like so good.
With Indy gave this whole like resume, like and with any luck, he's gone. Or
blend in, disappear. If he's
on his jacket and chicken,
like he got the Grail already.
Looks like he got his ass kicked by a chicken.
And he's like, "Does anybody speak a word of English here?" Like he's such a buffoon, like a bumbling idiot.
And he was so ready to believe that the museum brought out a delegation to pick him up, and like there's no museum here.
Ironically enough, the guy that meets him, by the way, little fun fact, the guy that Mr. Brode, that young actor, he was in Batman, and so was the guy that was the stamp guy. He played the older guy. He was one of the gangsters at the table. And,
wow.
Same year. Look close, you see, and the younger guy was in. I think he's one of the guys in the shootout. You see him, but you could definitely tell it's him. So they both appeared in Batman, which of course came out that same year.
Another little casting tidbit is the guy that plays Kazim. Mm-hmm. The leader of that kind of I don't want to say they're a cult, but their organization,
the protectors of the Grail. Yeah,
he was auditioning for Sallah for Raiders, and he got caught in traffic.
Oh God!
And he missed the audition.
Interesting.
He was, and I think that, I don't know if it was like he would have been a lock or a shoe-in or something, but he was on his way to the audition and got caught in traffic, couldn't get there, and they said, "All right, we'll go with John Rhys Davies,"
who is great. He's always
great. He's always great. But again, what do you guys think? I mean, my Sallah to me was a little too far. I felt like he shouldn't have been as. Again, it's like you got comedic. 3 levels of buffoons in this movie. You got Henry, you got Brody, and then you got Sallah, who should not be as stupid as he is in this movie.
I mean, is he stupid though? I mean, he needed those camels to get back to his brother-in-law because he lost the car. I mean,
Sallah would not. I don't agree. I don't agree with that. I know that scene is played. It's a gag. It's played for laughs. It's supposed to be funny. He puts Brody in the truck. The truck takes off, and it's just like
a Nazi truck.
Would Sallah make that mistake? When you look at him in Raiders, yes, he's funny. He's kind of whatever, but he's always there. I mean, this is somebody that Indy's supposed to depend on.
Yeah,
he's got these allies all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
Like Sallah is one of his.
Going on.
He's street savvy. He's that kind of thing. And he just was one more level of comic relief that we really didn't need. And I just felt like his character was wasted in this film. That's just my opinion. I don't know what you guys think, but
I mean, I think it was better than the last movie, right? Dial of Destiny. His character there was.
Well, that was just fan service. Sean, what do you think, Sallah? Overused, underused? I thought he was fine.
I thought it was fine. Maybe he lost a step or two. I don't know.
Father of Indy's got the little cap. He's like
he's going through a divorce. Having a rough time of it. No, I mean, when you have this many characters, you kind of have to.
Yeah. It's all like I said. It's all played for laughs. It's all like you can't. I guess you just couldn't have. The straight man in the bunch. Like Indy is literally the adult in the room. He's trying to wrangle in all of this buffoonery happening around him. Like he's like, what the hell, man? I got to take care of, so that's kind of what happens. And then there is a lot of comedy that comes from that. But I just feel like that, with Sallah, it should have been, more of an even keel there. But
I compare it to like Star Trek 4 as well, which was like one of the more popular ones.
Yeah,
a lot of Trek fans didn't like the comedy aspect of it, but that's really what made it like accessible to a lot of people too. The time travel, but with this one too, I think after the darkness of Temple of Doom, I think that comedy element just was really what connected with the audience a lot, and it still had its heart though. It still had those moments, the father-son bond and all that. But I see your point. It did go over the top with comedy. Like you said, almost every scene had some comedy element to it,
Yeah.
Sean, do you think that evens out the trilogy, though? Like having different especially with one so dark, and you had the first one, which is kind of like the best of all the worlds, and then this one's a little bit more kind of fun,
right?
But I think it just kind of it makes the whole trilogy probably stronger because you're getting really kind of defined.
Yeah, I mean,
experiences.
There's 3 different experiences, although I feel like this one is very much like Raiders of the Lost Ark. I'm like, with a lot of things that are similar to the first one. That at one point I thought I saw a scene. I'm like, oh wait, I thought that was in Raiders. The tank part. I'm like, is the tank part in this movie? And I don't know why, because it's Nazis and it's him, about to get his face pushed into something. So like, it to me, it seems like those two. I guess I don't know, they're very similar,
very structurally similar. Yeah, guys on motorcycles.
Yeah, it's but do I think it needs to be balanced out? I love all 3 of them, and I never thought.
Yeah.
I was also young. So
anytime feel like watching it over the years, they'll feel like it's sort of the Return of the Jedi of the 3, where it's like it feels familiar.
Yep.
It's like it's you can almost argue that it's kind of lazy in parts because of that that familiarity. It is a lot like Raiders, back in the desert, back in the that kind of thing. You take the humor out of it, and that's what you got. You got a rehash of Raiders, right?
Yes.
So that that's how I was feeling back in the day. It was really there was too much different about the film, except for Connery. The father-son thing was the heart and soul of the movie, and I just, for some stupid reason, I didn't see it then. I didn't appreciate that about the film. It's like because I wasn't looking for it, So now that is the movie right there. That is what totally makes this thing. Who cares what's going on?
Yeah,
it is that chemistry between those 2 characters that are just
perfect segue. Thank you so much for putting the tee in the grass and putting the ball on the tee. Because now I'm going to get my driver out and hit it, because this movie is usually indie, short round to a lesser extent in Temple of Doom. Because usually Indy's on his own, kind of doing his own thing.
Mm-hmm.
In this movie, he's literally, after the first quarter of the film, maybe even less, he's tied at the hip to somebody, which is Sean Connery, right? He literally has him with him in every scene, and it is so like that. And what Eric said, that chemistry is just so vital.
It really is.
That dynamic is so vital. Where Ford, as daring and brave and all the stuff that he is, when he's in front of his father, he's different. He becomes subservient. He's, yes, sir. And this kind of stuff. And the one time he goes back at him, he gets slapped in the face, like, Jesus Christ. And he gets, that's for blasphemy.
Yeah, he's a kid. He's like that overgrown Boy Scout that you saw in the beginning of the film. That kind of sets the tone, doesn't it? The fucking tie, like what's up with the tie? Like he's really put together in this movie, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Like he's still got the hat and the jacket, but he's very neat. He's very, because I guess I'm looking for my dad, So already there's that respect factor of doesn't even know where he is, but he's dressed like, you know what I mean? Like it just felt like it was kind of odd, but then, of course things get, now you understand why, when he meets up with Henry, he's just sort of, and it just the looks that he gives him and the disdain and just sort of it's just priceless.
He doesn't understand what his son does. Like what? Like,
yeah.
Like, you call this archaeology? It's not, but Indy says it in the beginning of the film when he's back in the class. He's like, I forget what percentage, I couldn't hear, like 90%, in the classroom, or 90% in research, and this and the other. He totally, lies about what his life is like, but I guess doesn't want these students to think that that's what it is. And his father comes from the traditional, right? The research and doing all this, and he couldn't believe like all the, you just killed the, like when he wipes out the Nazis in the room, right? He's like you just killed all those people. It's like,
because Henry had, like, if you really follow the canon, you start talking about the Young Indy series and how he left home to go fight in World War I and all this stuff. He becomes a spy, and he meets all these famous characters from history, which whatever, if you want to take that for part of it or not. But the point is that he hadn't spoken to his father in almost over 20 years. So yeah, you're right, Dean. Like, he has no idea what his son is up to, what he's accomplished,
what he does.
To become the person that he is. And it's just so funny that he would kind of jump back into that sort of young kid again, like, just because, he had such presence and such, respect, even though they're estranged and they don't get along. But it's still there, and which is great. Yeah.
Yeah. Good, Nick, because his father is such an imposing character, even though they're estranged, he still is an imposing influence. He was he was an archaeologist. He was where he got his career from, right?
Yeah, and I just think that relationship is so well done in this movie. The writing between those two characters, it's like you could see. It's like they're so opposite each other in many ways, but then it makes that last scene where he gets shot. Because he's not going to go and get this for the villain, right? But then when he shoots his dad, he's like, now you have to go because it's the only way we're going to keep him alive. It's like you really believe that they love each other. But I also love, like you mentioned, when he's like, what did you do here? Look what you did. Like, he does the same thing. Like, and then Salah says that line to him, right? He's like, what have you done? He's like, it's war. It's like, I get it now. I understand. You have to kill people. You have to do all this. But this happens to me all the time, right? That's another one of his famous lines that was in all the trailers, right? Yeah. It's like they're trying to kill us. It's like, this is a new experience for me. It happens to me all the time. This is his life.
Sean, do you feel in watching this film and then thinking about the whole trilogy, the villains aren't really that important? Like, the actual villain of each film isn't really that important because they're usually a surrogate for something else. They're the in-betweener for whatever the ultimate prize is, right? Or the relic.
You mean in all of them or just this one?
I think in all, right? I mean, even, you go back to Belloc. I mean, it's usually two opposite sides racing against each other for something, right? And that's interesting. That's an interesting thought that I had in these types of films, that the villains aren't really the problem in the film, meaning for the main character to solve. It's not really the villains. It's always like the chase.
Yeah, it was the chase. Absolutely. About this one, it's the chase. And he's the villain in this one is forgettable to me. Like, he's a great actor, but I don't, like, I think when I think of the story, not forgettable. When I think of the story, I think of the father-son relationship and all of that, and the Grail and the quest. And yeah, he's kind of like, he moves the story along, the villain, though, because obviously, what happens.
Another double agent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Germany declared war on the Jones boys.
Yeah.
It's sort of like a collector of artifacts,
right?
Champagne villain, probably more than Belloc. Belloc is like, actually is an archaeologist, but took it, tried to take the easy way out. But Belloc's still my favorite.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Because he's even on that even keel with Indy. We had that discussion in Raiders. I mean, Donovan just kind of feels like maybe sort of a cheaper version of Belloc in a way, like, because
he's got the money just to
throws money.
He's more of the he's got
exactly, Sean. Yeah, he throws the money at whatever he needs. He gets people to do it.
And then of course he supports the Nazi cause too, which is whoa. Right. Like you see him wearing the pin, and it's like he's.
Well, but then he said he didn't, right?
But he's in it for himself. Yeah, he does it for reasons,
Because that was the same thing with Dr. Schneider, right? Because that was her thing. Was he's Indy's like, you stood to be counted with with those people, and that's what it is. And she's like, no, I'm just I guess who would be able to facilitate what she wanted to do, but
it's a necessary evil.
Yeah, not realizing that it still doesn't make a difference. You're still not making the right call there. And Donovan was the same way. He's like, yeah, let Hitler, conquer the world, but he's only going to live a certain amount of time. I want the Grail. I want eternal life.
I want the cup.
Yeah. So his both of those characters, it looks like whatever allying with the Nazis was a means to an end, Sean. Right? They really weren't Nazis per se.
No,
they just weren't. They weren't great people.
No.
Definitely and there's Star Wars alum. Donovan as General Veers in Empire Strikes Back, and the actor that played Hitler was he played Ozzel. He was the guy that got choked by Vader.
Oh wow!
The original admiral. He apparently has played Hitler like no less than 4 times in his career, like documentary, like a dramatization, another movie. I think it was another TV series that he played him. Yeah, so I guess he's the go-to guy, or at least he was at the time. But yeah, the great Michael Byrne, who played the Vogel. Yeah, it was so good. He's so good. He had that. I don't know what it is about that face. Like he just
contort it, like bug his eyes out, and
when he's like when they're on the Zeppelin, and then he's like and he's like, tickets please, and then his face just goes like this, and it's like almost pulls his cap up over his head because he just he was the German commander in Force 10 from Navarone with Harrison Ford. There you go. Yeah, Carl Weathers.
But it's a good point about the villains though, because they are just cartoonish, stereotypical bad guys. There's no real character depth to them.
No.
And I think that's one of the things that Spielberg said made him kind of want to do something like Schindler's List, because he was just using like Nazis as like cartoon characters, like like having Hitler sign the autograph, it's another joke,
Yeah.
But they play their role because it is a serial. This is the whole formula for Indiana Jones, going from one cliffhanger to the next, and it's those villains are the MacGuffin that gets them to what they're trying to do. They're all chasing. It could be fortune hunters like it was at the beginning of the movie. It could be people from a different country, or it could just be Nazis, right? But they're going after the prize.
Yep. And just remember, X never marks the spot.
That scene, man. How many of you were bothered by that too? Like even when I was watching
the marble,
when they break the marble, because here's a guy who's like, it belongs in a museum, so you're taking something historic. Yeah, it was built over like a more historic thing.
He's desecrating a church.
He's breaking it to kind of. It was a funny scene though with the stamp. It was good. Yeah. But I'm sitting there, I'm like, that's historic too. You're breaking it.
That must have been one heavy ass thing. Like
stanchion.
Like I mean, because that marble was pretty thick.
Yeah.
For that thing, it's like it's not. Those things aren't that heavy when you consider. But
you just had to make a crack in it. That was and that was a great scene when. When he tells his father that he found Alexander, right? The tomb of, you found it, and was the shield there? And he's like, yes, and he's, Alexandretta, and he's just like, and he's like, Junior, you did it. He's like, no, Dad, like, you did it. It was all your research. So it was such a great. It was like a moment where where Henry, like kind of. Dropped that facade of being the father, and he's like, Junior, you did it.
Mm-hmm.
It was Dad. It was you. You did it. So there was
that's a really nice moment.
And because he was, and he was like that. There was rats, Dad. He's like, oh, there was. It's like, yeah, big ones. So it was kind of. Again, that nice little, you want that, what, Eric, this is very much like the Lethal Weapon films where they have just those little add-on, those little taglines at the end of humor, like that's just kind of, that kind of round, they kind of smooth out the rough edges of a scene, and it just kind of, a lot of them, Dad.
I mean, a lot of it did work. I mean, but there were certain things that didn't, I still don't, for me, like that guy, with the Rolls Royce Phantom 2, like,
and thanks.
And thanks. Well, you're welcome. I'm like, oh my God, it's so, like so, you almost want Williams to kind of accent that with the drone,
little rim shot.
Yeah, I mean, and then if you really listen, he kind of does in this film.
Sometimes.
Like, the scene with Hitler when he turns and he faces him, and Indy's like this, and then everything stops. You don't hear any other music but the drums, like, it's just so dramatic. And then he's just like, he just hands it the thing and it just walks off. Like, that's what made that scene work, I think, was Williams in that moment. Because he made it tense, tension.
Absolutely.
You think something's going to happen, and it just, So you got to give credit to the man himself.
Yes.
Like, he's a big part of this thing.
Oh, yeah, he knows. Yeah, his crescendos and all the things that John Williams does always punctuates and it adds the right amount of tension to it. So it as the title says, the Last Crusade, they're looking for the Holy Grail, which is good, kind of like the ultimate artifact, I guess, to get, right? And they, through a series of Indiana Jones style adventures, they get to a room where there's the Holy Grail, and there's a Templar knight there, still alive, because he can drink, from the Fountain of Youth or whatever, and drink it. But they need to choose. There's all these cups, and only one of them is the Grail. And if you choose the wrong one and drink from it, you're going to die. Sean, Donovan, oddly enough, has, Elsa, Dr. Schneider decides to choose. And then there's a curious cutaway. Like when he drinks it, there's a cut to her. Did she know she was choosing the wrong one, Sean, do you think?
Yes. Yeah. I felt that way this time. Yeah. And I also was like, why would he not make like Indy drink from the cup first? You try it this way, at least he's got one, like, I
think he was so
mulligan.
Himself, right? You
get a mulligan, right? Yeah. You get one mulligan, and then maybe tell her she's got to drink it. You got two. Well, the knight, I don't know. I think he.
Well, he had her choose it for him.
Yes.
Right. She picked. So
she said, "Let me." She said, "Let me." He's like, "Which one?" She let me choose. Yeah.
Yeah. So
do you think she sandbagged him? She knew.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
She knew it because she knew what, she's right on that level with Indy. It's just she knows her shit.
Don't trust anyone. His own advice.
And Indy says right after that moment with the knight, when the knight says the classic line, "He chose poorly."
I love it so much.
Indy's like, it would not be. She says to Indy, it would not be made out of gold. And he gives, that's the cup of a carpenter, and Christ. I mean, it's that crappy looking thing, and that is So absolutely, it was. She just did away with him just to get him out of there, just to get him out of it, because now she could probably come in, and because she knew exactly what she was looking for.
So Nick, do you think that was a redemption for her? Do you think she redeemed herself from all the shitty things she did, or?
I mean, I am not her judge, so what do I know? But I think character-wise, absolutely. I think it was intentional. I think she intentionally, did that. And I think, to give that, the credit, like, she's the expert. And she was the one that was like playing the Jones boys, right? So of course I think he would trust her judgment. Like, you're more the expert on the Holy Grail than I am, kind of saying, so which one? And then he says, "Oh yes, look, of course, this is the cup of a king of kings."
Probably the cup of king of kings. You know what? You make a good point, because had Connery been in there, he would have had Connery picked. But Indy is not a Grail expert like Dr. Schneider was, so that's why he would.
But he should have shot Indy then.
But then
Indy has the reputation of
he's a hunter. He knows.
He knows exactly how to get around all these.
So does Henry.
He's a
not so much.
The umbrella wouldn't help. Flipping the umbrella wouldn't help.
But he's saying the things. He's saying it as it's happening.
Yeah.
He is agile. Yes. No, but
he doesn't. He's not a hunter.
But you're right, Sean. You're absolutely right. I mean, that's what you think. Henry is not capable of these things, but the point is that he's. I can do it better than you can. I always have. Thing, like so there's a sort of a competition there, I guess, a little bit, and because we've seen Indy in the field so many, we don't see that in Henry. But he does surprise you in the film. Like, he does things in the movie that, okay,
with the pen.
He's not so much of the the
bookish,
guy behind the desk, the bookish, whatever. So yeah, you're right about
Henry,
that.
the pen. Henry the pen.
yeah.
Pen is mightier than the sword.
Yeah, that really milked that one. It's like, yeah, here we go.
And that stupid face he makes. He's like,
he's making those faces throughout the whole film. He does.
I know.
He's like turning around in the middle of scenes, like not knowing where to go, like shit's happening, and he's just like fucking standing around like a bystander. Like you're involved in this shit. You're gonna get killed if you don't watch out. Like,
I do love when he rides off though, and he's like on the side of the saddle.
Totally
that gets me all the time. I don't know why.
Follow me. I know the way. The horse is just totally out of control.
But they had to give him. They had to give him that one scene where they're in, the hotel, and Brody, he's like, "How's your head?" And he's like, "Oh, better now that I've seen this." And Brody knows his stuff too, right there. Yeah. So they gave him that little moment where, yes, he's vital to it, and he knows, he is a help, and everybody knows their research and all that kind of stuff, which is great. Yeah, because that's what that's part of it too. It's not how many Nazis you could punch, but how many, like, how much does Indy know? How much does and it all comes together, like
yeah.
So, and of course the Grail, and then the whole bit with Henry and Indy with the Grail diary too. It's like he's we have to face all of these things, and he's like, which is one of my favorite scenes where they have that little heart to heart there. And he's like, what does it mean? What does this all mean? He's like, I don't know. We'll find out. The point is that we'll do it together.
Yeah.
And that was a really, again, nice moment. So he is kind of reaching out, and you think that it's, because Henry has this greedy streak, and maybe all he cares about is the Grail. But I think he, in a way, it's like he's pleased that Indy's is part of this now with him, that he's there, that he's doing this with him, that, so there's that he's kind of reaching out there. I feel like,
he was obsessed. He was obsessed, but not for the reason that Belloc was obsessed, and not for the reason that Don, because at the end he said, Indy asked his father, he goes, well, how did you feel? He said, enlightenment.
Yeah.
Like that's what it was. It was a quest probably for inner knowledge, and not for the Grail itself, because he said, I've seen it, I've drank from the Grail. I saw the Templar Knight, that's enough, let it go into,
and that's why he can let it go. Yeah. He was at that stage where he was like, I've done everything I can.
Yeah. That's why he said, that's why I knew I had to get that Grail diary as far away from me as possible. And he's like, right here, you dolt.
I should have mailed it to the Marx.
Should have mailed it to the Marx Brothers.
I feel like I'm in the room with Sean Connery, man. This is
one of my favorite lines: "The armies of darkness will march all over the face of the earth."
Well, look at that. Well, at the end too, he goes, "Elsa thought, she found the prize," which is a great line, which is a Highlander reference.
Absolutely a Highlander reference.
That was fantastic. They threw that in there.
On the prize.
Yeah.
So go back to
there's
that.
a lot of Easter eggs in there. Like when they see the drawing of the Ark of the Covenant. Are you sure that's the Ark of the Covenant? Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Pretty sure. Yeah.
Pretty sure.
they play the music.
Just don't ask me where it is.
Let's talk about that sequence. Okay, that's another funny moment. It's not meant to be funny, but it's hilarious every time I watch it, because the scene is like, it's set up, and it's one of the most diabolical traps that Indy finds himself in, with that, Cosm comes in with that little match, and he just and he fucking ignites the whole thing, right? It's
the whole cavern,
the whole cavern. Meanwhile, Indy's got this fucking torch, and he's walking through, and the fucking thing is like dripping, like there's flames like dripping off the torch, and it doesn't ignite.
And he's saturated in petroleum.
Yeah, his whole arm is full of it's like wet with petroleum.
I totally would thought. I'm like, why isn't he catching on fire? Because just the fumes would ignite him.
Right, exactly. It's just one of those moments where it's those happy little mistakes that I guess they just left in, and it's become such a beloved thing to look for, and of course I'm going to talk about my biggest pet peeve, which is
do it now.
the fucking bag around the turret of the gun.
Oh,
how the fuck did that thing get around the turret of the gun for him to be hanging off of it? There's no way that could have happened.
We'll have to go back and watch.
Logistically, you cannot. There's no possible way that thing. The strap of the bag is under his jacket. He rolls off the tank, and how does that bag get caught on the fucking turret?
And he's like
literally, it swung out, and then when he came back in, he hooked in.
I could see, like in Crystal Skull, he's wearing the bag. The strap is on the outside of the jacket, so I could see maybe it happening then. But even so, like the front of the turret is pulled back; it's splayed because of because it got exploded. Yeah. So you would have to take the strap and like literally wrap it around the turret for him to be like literally hanging off the thing. There's just no way I could see that happening. Again, one of those moments where
we know what you were thinking during that whole scene.
It just felt sloppy to me. Like, and then not to mention the fact that, Indy, the whole bit with him with the whip, and it's so, like he takes out the whip and he manages to get Henry wrapped around his leg, and Henry's being like, he's like holding on to him. But meanwhile, fucking Vogel is like standing behind him, giving fucking kidney punches. Yeah, and he's just like, and it was just like, it was like, there was no effort there. There was like, it's like, come on. And then when Sala rides up, Vogel stops punching him. He just stands there. He's like letting it happen. He's like letting him get away. It's like, it was so really shoddily done. It was really, I was really, it's bad.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch when he.
I didn't find it that bad, but you know what bothered me though, when he crossed over the invisible bridge, because it's a different perspective, and then after he's done, he throws the gravel over it so you could see, and then because then the bad guys come right behind him, because they see where the trail is. I'm like,
why wouldn't he have done that to start that? Like, you throw it out and then you find it. Like, he's like, I'm going to step.
I don't think he knew what it was. Well,
he didn't know what it was.
So he didn't know what he was doing, right? Because he sticks his legs straight out and he just kind of walks.
One step in,
He didn't know if he was going to float or
which is my point. You don't know if you're going to end up falling. If you believe that if there's something there, if you could throw gravel on it after you've crossed
it. That's a good point. Yeah.
Why can't you throw gravel on it before you cross it?
Oh, I see. Once he took the first step. Got it. And said,
dramatic
tension. Of course.
Yes.
And before that, when he steps on the wrong letter, the I is the J instead of the I, and he goes down like that, but then you see all of his legs go through, and then when he comes out of it, it's like he just kind of it just was like a little, my leg went through and I got out.
This
it's a little sloppy there. It's like
a pretty questionable like stuff happening, and that kind of adds to the whole like B level feel of the thing. And I wonder if all of that is done on purpose, because it was shot so quickly and dirty, as Lucas always points out, which is the reason I think these movies work so well, because they work on that level, which is one of the reasons why I did not like Dial of Destiny, because it's like $200 million movie, and it looked like a Marvel film, like CG up the ass. And it just really took me out of it.
This was pre CG, right? So this was still the practical era. So they kind of,
but even so, would they have leaned into that as much? I wonder, into the technology. Lucas probably would have said, "Yeah, go for it."
Oh yeah, I think Spielberg did it in Crystal Skull. There's plenty of CG in that, right? Plenty of.
He claims that there wasn't. I mean, I think a lot
of those monkeys were trained to swing in the jungle with.
Well, yeah, but there were definitely CG elements, but like he says, it wasn't as much as people
and all those
thought
ants
there were.
Trained.
Some of the shots in the movie look like a CG background and stuff, but it's really not. I guess that's just what's his name.
Not selling me on it.
There's a lot of suspension of disbelief, though. The X thing. It's people have been trying to hunt for the Holy Grail for like millennia, right? And suddenly the X, it's like it's so obvious, it's ginormous. Nobody put two and two together. With like, gee, where there's the 11, there's the 9, where's the X? Oh, look,
right there, boom.
Yeah,
and it's fun,
pretty quick.
To your point, Nick, people have been searching for this for a millennia. I feel bad for the Templar Knight. Because the first people that show up after 700 years fuck the whole thing up. It's one visitor destroyed. They couldn't listen to one simple direction. Don't cross the seal, and the whole thing is ruined. He's like, oh, these people came, and he's got to stand there and watch them fuck it up, and watch it, and then have the stuff collapse and wave goodbye. It's like,
I love the wave though. That's the best.
What's wrong?
You have to, because otherwise people would go drinking out of the Grail for the rest of it. Everybody live forever.
I know something had to happen, but.
And why don't they live forever? They drank. There shouldn't we have to worry about Indy for any movies after that.
Well, that's the reason why he survived nuclear bomb.
He passed the threshold. It doesn't work anymore.
Right from the Grail. That's how he survived the nuclear bomb.
Yeah,
that's
but once you drink the Grail, you can't pass the threshold.
There you go.
No, I think you lose the benefit, right? Like like you're not going to.
No, you're not going to be immortal.
Yeah, I think you have to keep drinking it. I don't think you
which is why the Grail Knight survived.
And he was getting weaker too over the.
But he wanted to die. Like he was like, please put me out of my fucking misery, man.
I love when he plays to stay like this weight.
He did the fall back.
Fun, yeah. But now, after that was over, do you think the knight then had to go and crawl down and find the cup again?
No, I think he died in that moment. No, because
he died. I think he's just kind of like,
the temple. Yeah, the temple collapsed, so therefore he's gone.
And there was no purpose now. He can't defend the cup. He can't. He can't.
The Grail was forever lost. Now it's buried. It's down there. So. So I think he got killed in that moment, but I think he was okay with that.
He's like the first people that show up and they
thank you.
Like I was here when there was no electricity, no nothing, and I followed the simple directions. These people come and the first people and they wreck the whole thing.
I remember, Dean, you had to nitpick about this one though. Like one of your first nitpicks was the book in the beginning. Donovan had the book on display, and it was so like your comment was that it wouldn't be in such great shape, because it would be you would think it would be more like in tatters, like it would just
not be preserved.
And and you're probably right about that.
I don't know, maybe with preservation and stuff, or how they found it. I think I'm thinking. Okay.
There's a lot. I mean, like I said, we could go on and on.
Yes, we could
with this stuff because it's just so easy to do, but it does make for a great, great fun.
Sean has a critical
walk away from this. So you're saying that you drink from the cup and you don't get eternal life if you leave the temple?
Right. Yeah, you have to stay in the temple.
He said immortality extracts a heavy price, right? He says immortality extracts a heavy price.
Immortality is that you are the sentinel of the cup. You're the protector of the chalice, meaning you can never leave the temple.
But that wasn't their understanding. That wasn't what's his face's understanding of that.
No, nobody knew that.
Yeah, well, no one knew it. They didn't.
Nobody knew. Nobody knew that little detail. No.
Right. He said it was the Grail extracts a heavy price.
Yeah. But it's almost like a by the way though. It's like, but the Grail, like it's just almost like an afterthought. Like, we got it, and he's like, oh, by the way, you can't cross the sea.
But wait a minute. So then you pour it on the wound, right?
Yeah,
on Sean Connery's wound, and when he leaves the thing, shouldn't his wound come right back?
Nah, because that's not eternal. That's just a wound.
Get out of here!
It did what it was supposed to do while he was in the safe. He was in the safe zone, so it did what it was supposed to do.
You are making this up as you go along. Come on!
No.
Sean, I hung on every word of that Templar Knight.
Yes.
What he said.
He's 700 years old. His mind is failing.
He didn't know what he was saying. He didn't know what he was saying half the time. Like 12 Angry Men. He was like,
his mind is gone. It's cobwebs at this point.
He didn't know what he was saying.
The first people he's talked to in 700 years. He's like, still doesn't know how to talk.
You're strangely dressed for a night. He's like, fondling the.
It's funny that he spoke English too. He should have been like French or something.
Right.
Yeah.
No, well,
that's the one thing too. They didn't obviously. They called them the movie's called Last Crusade, and it had absolutely nothing to do with the Crusades. It's two separate things.
Well,
like
it's tied into the Knights Templar. And
it's King Arthur thing.
It's a holy journey. Crusade's a holy journey. So I guess
exactly. And this is the final holy journey because they screwed it up. Can't have anything nice. The Joneses, they wreck everything. All right, let's if we haven't yet, let's do some favorite scenes. You know, it's going to be hard because there's so many great scenes in this film. But Nick, what do you have, Indiana?
I would have said the tank, but I know Eric hates that scene.
I don't hate the whole scene.
There's a lot to be.
Yeah, I think it's a great action sequence, but that and like the beginning with River Phoenix, like that whole sequence, like I love when he takes the snake out of his friend. He's like, it's just a snake, and you're like, why is he not scared of the snake? You know, like, and then you're like, oh, we're gonna find out why
really
he's scared of
traumatized.
snakes. You know, then you see how he gets really traumatized. So I love that sequence with River Phoenix and everything. Yeah. What could have been. I mean, I think I wish he had been able to live longer, and he would have come back to that character for the movies. He didn't want to do Young Indiana Jones because it was TV, but I think Lucas would have gotten him back to do the movie or something, you know?
Yeah.
Interesting. Any other ones? That's it.
I mean, I just like them all. The sunset, just riding off into the sunset too. Yeah. Like that was just a really nice, you know, nowadays when we watch the end credits to see like if there's going to be another scene, I remember sitting in there and just watching them riding off into the sunset. I just thought that was beautifully shot, and it was just a nice way to end the movie, you know?
Yeah, they tied it up. That was it. They didn't leave anything open. Eric, what's not your favorite scene.
I have three.
Let's hear them.
My first would be I do love the church stuff. And I love the fact that Indy's not wearing the outfit in that scene. It's important because it's very James Bond to me, which, you know, that's one thing that we didn't mention is how many actual James Bond references and nods there is in this film. This literally is the James Bond movie that Spielberg always wanted to make, I think. Not just talking about Connery, but there are several members of the cast that were in James Bond movies, including Allison Doody. The church sequence is right out of From Russia with Love, because there is a sequence in Venice underneath. There's rats. There's the catacombs underneath with, you know, Bond spying, you know, through the thing, and he's in the boat and under the, you know, so that's taken right out of From Russia with Love right there. But that's one of my favorite sequences, even though it's a little shoddily done, and then Indy like kind of bursting through the wall. Right there, when you first look at it, it's like solid rock. But then when you see him going through it, you could definitely tell it's like a mock-up. And he's like, he moves
a lot of rocks. He throws his shoulder into. I fell on ice and I tore my rotator cuff. He throws a shoulder into a solid stone wall and it breaks like he's the Hulk.
But I love those moments where it's like it's comedic, and then he finds the knight in the coffin there, and that's a great moment too. It's like, and he gets he's caught up in it, and he's like in the excitement of it.
It's like your father, Giddy is the schoolboy.
Yeah. So my second favorite scene would be the heart to heart on the blimp, where he's like, you know, let's talk. You know, he's like, you know, you. Last time we had a quiet drink, you know, I had a milkshake. And he's like, oh, what did we talk about? He's, you know, he's not even paying attention. And Indy's just, you know, and they go back and forth. I was a wonderful father. Oh, he's like, when? You know, so I love that banter. And it's just like, did I ever tell you to brush your teeth, do your homework? No, I respected your privacy. And I taught you self-reliance, you know. And then it's just a great sequence. And then after that, he's like, okay, I'm here. What do you want to talk about? And Indy has nothing to say.
Like, I don't know.
You know, and he's like, I can't. What are you complaining? What are you complaining about? You know, like
he closes the Grail diary, like he closes it, he puts it to the side. He's like, okay, what would you like to talk about?
But there's such a classic. I think all of us can relate to that moment as both fathers or with our dads, just to have those kind. They're trying to get those heart to heart moments, you know, but sometimes it just doesn't happen, you know, like you just got nothing to say. And that's one of the, you know,
right. He was trying, you know, like, okay, well, what do you want? He was like, well, no.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So that's a great, that's Zach's favorite scene too. Like we always play that scene, you know, together. And then of course my third favorite is the gunshot. That is such a pivotal moment when you hear that gunshot ring out,
that was a serious moment too. That wasn't
it's
comedic.
so
Right?
I know it's so fucking loud, and it really gets your attention. And now you know the shit's real. Now it's like, okay, we're no more jokes, no more. That's when the moment when the movie just turns into something sinister and something, the stakes are high, and it's just from that point on, that it's just really well done.
Yeah. Now you have to ask yourself, what do you believe?
What do you believe? Yeah. But that gunshot really gets you. And he's like, you know something? You're absolutely right. And then boom, it's so loud, and it's just, it echoes, and it's just, and everybody, even she is like upset about it.
Yeah.
Right. Her reaction to it, he's like, get back. And it's like, and then it just, that it's such a great tense moment. And I love that. Yeah. So there it is,
Sean, what do you got?
Is it Marcus Brody that's got the next funny line after that, when he like rides off and he gets falling off? Because you're right, it takes like the serious tone for the rest of the way. I never thought of that. Yeah.
I mean, everybody plays, a really every character in that moment is like, Sala is looking over, he's helping Henry. Yeah. Marcus is like, Indy, you must hurry, and all that. Everybody plays it in that way, in that light.
Yeah, the stakes have absolutely been raised in more ways than one. So, and
then of course Connery, where he's like, you must believe, and he's like, and Henry knows almost knows exactly what's happening, what Indy has to go through. Yeah. So the torture of him dying, but being worried about his son, because he could die, and whatever. He's like, oh, it's all right. He's like, no, it's not all right, because he's got to go through the next thing, and it's such a great ending. It's probably the best part of the movie for me is when the stakes are, so
penitent man,
penitent man will pass,
penitent man will pass, penitent. Like he just keeps saying it all kind of penitent.
Yeah. So
Sean, what do you got?
I'll do. Like I said, I like the River Phoenix scene in the beginning. I like the transition from when the guy puts the hat on him. When he said, "You lost today, but you don't have to like it." I love that line.
Yeah,
I love that line.
You lost today, kid,
but you don't have to like it. I love that. And I would say the two scenes. It's again father and son's thing when the tank goes over and he thinks he lost him.
Yeah.
I love and it's weird how Indy's on the side there. That's also weird. But I love how he's looking over too. Like he's like, they all think they lost him. And then I love that moment between him and his father. That's just and then it's like, I thought I lost you. And then like Indy's just embracing it. He drops him.
He like sinks into his dad. He's like loving the hug.
And then he drops him down.
And then he drops him. He's like, all right, let's get going again. Like
exhausted, right?
Around for.
And then of course the
hat float comes him out of nowhere, which is really nice.
Like you get the little refrain. It's like,
how classic was that? Because how many times he would have lost that hat at some point.
Of course.
And then it just kind of rolls
like a boomerang. It always comes back.
Yep.
And then just another thought. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut anybody off.
No,
when Indy grabs her her hand. Oh, I forgot it. Why is I know the actress now. I'm forgetting the name of the woman. Dr. Schneider.
Elsa.
And he's got her hand. He's like, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Cliffhanger, which that one of the. But I'm like, this was that before Cliffhanger, that opening scene in Cliffhanger, which was shocked the hell out of me. But I love that when the father grabs him and says, let it, he's got him, and he let it go, and
he says Indiana.
He calls him by his name, and not his real name, the name that he wants, and that I like. That those are my
he comes around to it. I'm going to favorite. I'm going to go with the River Phoenix thing too, and I think it's totally plausible that all those series of events happened in one shot that would have that effect on a 14-year-old kid. I could see that where all that stuff happens. Like this was one spectacular thing. Now they took the series and made everything he does spectacular. But it within the realm of this film, it just seems like he was a regular kid. He was a Boy Scout, and he kind of, he's parroting his dad or whatever about this belongs in a museum and shouldn't be there. And he just grabbed it. But But I totally bought into like all these things happened and it had such a profound effect because the guy has a scar, has a scar on his face, and Indy gets his scar, and he's got the 5 o'clock shadow. And I think this event I think just kind of crystallized him. Like I don't think this thing, they retconned it afterwards, but I don't think this kind of thing happened to him regularly, because then it would deflate the impact of this. Then it would make it seem like it was a cheap thing. Like, oh, okay. Before they decided to make everything he did an adventure, I think in the framework of the film, it was just this really crazy sequence of events that happened to him, and it just had like totally changed him from following probably the way his dad would have into, oh wow, that there's something exhilarating about this aspect of it, even though those guys were grave robbers and
I see that,
and the worst kind of people, And then, pretty much anything that Connery is in, just listening to that guy talk in this film is just, it's gold. It's just like,
Yeah. Well, the first time you meet him, Junior, I remember it got a great laugh out of you, Dean, when we first saw it. Like when he says Junior for the first time, you busted out laughing.
Junior?
Yeah. And it was,
who's going to save you, Junior?
It's the stuff that's not meant to be funny. That's exactly. Funniest.
Yeah.
That's
right. It's the moments like that we remember, so we take away what we want to take away from this.
Yeah. And actually that whole scene with the vase.
Yeah.
And Connery is excited that the vase was not real. It was, and he thought he was talking to Indy. I was like, oh, thanks, Daddy. He's like, oh no, you could tell by the cross section, Like, he was lamenting over this Ming vase that got destroyed. Like, oh my God! Yeah.
Another great moment too is when he's got the lighter, and he's like, he pulls it out of it. Yeah, it feels like a cigarette lighter, and he's like, but that one little subtle thing he says, he goes, very good. Like I say that all the time. All the when the kids do something right or when they do something, like I'm like very good. Like I just love that little moment, but then of course it just turns into chaos because Henry just fucks it up,
So here's the thing that I actually saved it. Here's what I learned about these films that came to me after 45 years or whatever it is. These films were always about overcoming adversity when the odds are stacked against you. Mm-hmm. That's what, like, if you think about it, every time Indy has to do something, he's never has the right equipment. His opponents have more expensive or better, or like it's always him versus a tank and he's on a horse, or it's, him having to crawl underneath the truck in Raiders. Like he always never has, he's always the underdog in those circumstances where he's got to figure out and use his limited tools, but ingenuity.
Yeah.
To overcome the odds. Like it just, for some reason when I was watching, I'm like, that's what struck me. It wasn't about the, fortune and glory and getting this. It's always about like his opponents always have more. They're bigger, they're stronger, they have a plane, he's got a motorcycle. It's always about him being in a disadvantaged situation, not because he's a horrible planner or not a good person. It's just, he's just a guy who runs into all these circumstances and has to use his, wherewithal.
Yeah, he's always in over his head. Yeah.
He's what, Sean?
He's an archaeology professor, right? Or he's and he doesn't have the most money. They don't, it's not like he's got a wealth of benefactors. And his opponents are always bigger, stronger. I think that's a great point.
I think it's his intellect, actually. It's not his, because he's not the strong. He gets his ass kicked plenty of times. So it's not like he's the strongest or super powered or any of that. It's always his intellect that has him figure, I've got to figure out a way out of this. And let me grab a rock and put it in the turret.
That's one of the best arguments to make when people say that, this whole Big Bang Theory thing where Raiders Indy's irrelevant in the story. It's like, it's not about him saving the world as much as it is because he knew that it was just that little subtle clue at the very end where he says, close your eyes.
Yeah.
And that's what saved them. It's like he would have died, Marion would have died if they had looked at the thing. Nobody is safe in this situation. But Indy knew that one vital bit of information that Belloc might have known, but didn't care, but didn't give a shit at that point, or maybe he just forgot or whatever. But Indy remembered it and he knew it, and that's what saved his ass. And and that's what saved. Therefore, he got out of that situation, and it's like because he knew that information, and he retained what he's learned. It's not just that he's living a life of adventure. It's like he is a bookworm. He is learning this shit.
That's what it is. It's not like he's always sitting in a bar getting into bar fights. He's
right.
He does this stuff, but he uses his intellect to make up for lack of resources. And he doesn't have the money that Belloc has, and be able to hire warriors from the jungle to kind of do your bidding. He's the one that's always against that. He's got to figure out a way how to get away from those guys and get through it. And I don't know why it hit me today watching it after all these years. I'm like, it really is like always about just him being overmatched. And how does he, and that's where we get the exciting stuff, because he is always overmatched, and he is just a regular guy doing this. He's not super powered, and he does take his lumps, and he takes a lot of lumps, and I don't know. It just hit me after all this time.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely right. Really good point. Yeah. No, it's a great point, because you're right. That's what makes these movies. It's again, and the character just grows, right? He's learned a few things after the experience in Raiders. It kind of changed him, I think.
Yeah.
Because in this film, he's kind of, he does kind of act a little, you don't really know, he's a little bit more cynical, more cautious, a little bit more, when they start talking, when Donovan's trying to talk to him, maybe he just doesn't want to deal with it because it has everything to do with his dad. Because I'm not interested in anything my dad's been interested in, because because of the estrangement or whatever. He just doesn't seem to that eager to dive in to the adventure. What motivated him was to find his father. He felt compelled to find him because he disappeared. It didn't give a shit about the Grail.
No.
But then because of course he becomes involved, and once he gets into it, that's when those great moments arrive where he does become part of the game, right? He's that obsession kind of takes hold of him as well as you saw it at the very end when he's like literally holding Elsa. She falls to her death. And then he's right, a split second later, he's in the same position and he's reaching for the Grail because it takes hold of him in that moment.
At least he touched it. She wasn't. Well,
So,
as we wrap up, let me put this question to Sean and Nick. We'll give you guys the last word.
Oh boy,
should Last Crusade have been the last Crusade? Should they? I mean, even with the young Indiana Jones, anything that came after, should they have just pinched it off there?
Nick,
Sean, go for it. Okay. Kingdom of Crystal Skull and all this other stuff. It sounded good on paper, but do you think it's kind of tarnished?
Kingdom of Crystal Skull. I went to the theater. I saw it. It mostly forgettable to me. It was good to see him back. Like you hear that. I got to say, the music is another character. Is another element of this. That when I heard that, then it's like it brought me. I was like, I wanted to be in. And it got me back for a short bit, but then I don't know. It got a little too much, and like you say, should you leave well enough alone? Maybe I thought Dial of Destiny. I don't know how you felt about it. I liked it a little better than Kingdom of Crystal Skull. I'll say that.
Eric looks like he's formulating an opinion, so we're going to throw it to him too.
No. But I if they had just left it there, I would have been fine with it.
Okay. Indiana Leshy?
I agree with I enjoyed Dial of Destiny, but that Last Crusade should have been the last movie with Harrison Ford from beginning to end as Indiana Jones. I think if they were going to make other movies with like a River Phoenix or somebody else playing, I'm cool with that, and then have Harrison Ford maybe just like having like a scene or something like that, but he was just, I mean, I don't want to sound ageist, but it was just like, it's fine. Too old to see a guy running around when he's like 70 doing those stunts and everything. And the ending for Last Crusade was perfect. It was like, let it go. You don't need to go hunting down all these antiquities and, doing all this. And let's ride off into the sunset. And that's it. It was just the perfect end. And you still could have prequel adventures, things and that. But for Harrison Ford, I think that was it. And that's why you didn't see it for like decades after, right?
Yeah.
So
20 something years. Eric, what do you think?
I definitely think it should have ended there. I mean, but of course, we all got excited when Star Wars came back and all these, all these things that are just happening again. Crystal Skull might have been the first of this sort of reemergence of all this IP happening. People hate that movie. I don't hate it, but I don't love it. I just, it just felt tired. Spielberg didn't want to make it.
Yeah.
Therefore, he made a bad movie on purpose, in my opinion. He just did it for the nostalgia of it.
Yeah.
Just bringing all the people back that were involved and hanging out and doing that. That's the reason he made that film. And that's the reason why he didn't do Dial of Destiny. He's like, I'm done with this. It's like even Last Crusade to a certain extent, I don't think that he was as eager to come back. You definitely got the stamp.
Yeah.
Right. You definitely feel like,
he gave his word to Lucas and that was it. Right. I mean,
yeah. Lucas had a different thing in mind totally for this movie for Last Crusade. And it just wasn't, but Spielberg, this is Spielberg's movie. I think this is his Indiana Jones movie in the sense that it was all about the father and son thing. And of course we see that reoccur in all of his films, the estranged dad and, that kind of thing. So, I think Dial of Destiny was totally not necessary. I don't really want to see Indy like Nick was saying. I didn't want to see Indy as an old man. He was far more curmudgeon than Henry ever was. Henry at least loved life. He was excited about the thing. He showed that exuberance. Connery showed that exuberance. Harrison Ford for me was just felt tired, you know?
Yeah.
So
I think the biggest thing I can say is I saw Kingdom of the Crystal Skull once, and I saw Dial of Destiny once, and I saw that on a plane.
Yeah, and
that was enough. I like the notion of how does this man who was like young in the 1930s, how is he dealing with the social upheaval? Because that's kind of what the beginning was. It was kind of like this man out of time, but I didn't need that anyway.
No.
And it was just, and I saw each one of them once and I'm like, I'm okay with it. And that pretty much tells you all you need to know. So I think that's going to do it. Let us know what you thought. How does Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade stack up in the canon of now 5 Indiana Jones films? Hit us up on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube and let us know how you feel about it. So, Indiana Nick Leshy, thank you so much.
Thank you
for joining us. We appreciate it. As always, always fun. And like you're an easy mark. You love my impressions. I love
your impressions. Every single one.
I gotta say your Connery's pretty good, Dean.
It's getting better.
I will say that.
Shut up.
Okay. Why you gotta be mean?
Sean, you don't.
Okay. When you insult me as Sean Connery, then it's okay.
Sean Grady, thank you so much for joining us as well.
Mm-hmm.
Always love to have you guys on for these types of films. So
it's fun.
I love going back in time.
I think we need to revisit Star Trek, and maybe Star Trek 4 might be the one to do.
Hey.
Oh, I would love that.
Yeah. We'll see. That's that's the best. I'll tell you the favorite scene right now is Scotty talking to the mouse. Computer, hello. You just gave me the equation for transparent aluminum. How do we know he didn't invent the thing anyway? It's totally messing with the Prime Directive, like not giving a shit. But anyway, that's for another time. And of course, Eric and I will be here. He's going to be on his comfy couch. I'll be in my gaming chair until we see each other again. New episodes come out every Thursday. So again, if you haven't followed us yet, go ahead and do that. And you don't have to worry about what day they come out. You just get a notification on your favorite podcast platform provider or on YouTube. And if you subscribe on YouTube, you'll get a little dingy notification that new episodes are out. So that's going to do it. we're closing the book on Indiana Jones until we do Temple of Doom, and so we will revisit that at some point. But for now, for Nick, for Sean, and for Eric, this has been Dean asking you, please be kind. Go ahead and rewind.
You've been listening to the 3324 podcast with Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber. You can find us on your favorite podcast provider, so please like, subscribe, and rate to become a part of the 3324 family. Your feedback is important, so make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at 3324 podcast and on Twitter at 3324p to join the conversation.